And the animals, the hide, the gravy, the spices, the bones, the giddim, and the horns, the hooves, combine to convey the tumor of foods, but not the tumor of the vela. Similarly, if someone slaughters a non-kosher animal for a non-Jew and is convulsing, it conveys the tumor of foods, but not the tumor of the vela until it dies or he chops its head off. The Torah has provided more things that convey the tumor of foods than that convey the tumor of the vela. Foods that contract the tumor from of a tumor and food that contract the tumor from a derivative tumor combine with one another to convey tumor according to the level of the lesser of the two. How so? The volume of half an egg of Rishon food and the volume of half an egg of Sheni food that one mixed together is a Sheni. The volume of a half an egg of Sheni food and the volume of half an egg of Shlishi food that one mixed together is a Shlishi. The volume of an egg of Rishon and the volume of an egg of Sheni food that one mixed together with is a Rishon. If he separated them, this is a Sheni and this is a Sheni. If one fell by itself and one fell by itself onto a loaf of Truma, they disqualified it. If they both fell together, they make it Sheni. The volume of an egg of Sheni food and the volume of an egg of Shlishi food that one mixed together is a Sheni. If he split them, then this one is a Shlishi and that one is a Shlishi. If this one fell by itself and that one fell by itself onto a loaf of Truma, they do not disqualify it. If they both fell together, they make it Shlishi. The volume of an egg of Rishon food and the volume of an egg of Shlishi food that one mixed together is a Rishon. If you split them, this one is a Sheni, that one is a Sheni, because even the Shlishi that touched the Rishon becomes a Sheni. The volume of 2 eggs of Rishon food and the volume of 2 eggs of Sheni food that one mixed together is a Rishon. And if you split them in two, this one is a Rishon and this one is a Rishon. Into 3 or 4, they are a Sheni. The volume of 2 eggs of Sheni food and the volume of 2 eggs of Shlishi food that one mixed together is a Sheni. And if you split them in two, this is a Sheni and that one is a Sheni. Into 3 or 4, they're Shlishi. Okay.
Okay. 9. Mikratos. So you got a bunch of loaves of bread or bread rolls or something that you put into a tray and they're baked together, and because they all rose nicely, they joined together, right?
Okay.
So now it says noshchos, they've bitten into each other, but they've just kind of grown together and they're like one piece. The kikarim noshchim zeh nitmes achas mehen b'sheretz. So if one of them becomes tamei from a sheretz, let's say a dead sheretz falls onto one of them, kulo techila, then every one of them becomes a rishon. Okay.
So would that
it's all
be the same
one.
if when some people make collars, sometimes the collars stick together?
That's
so
right.
If,
That's exactly what we're talking
about. Fell on one, it would contaminate the other one. Right.
All of them become a rishon. Okay. Perishu, and if they separate it out, kulan techila. Even if you broke them apart afterwards, it doesn't matter. They were all one piece basically when they became tamei. So breaking them apart doesn't make any difference. Now, what happens if they became tamei with a tamei liquid? So the liquid is a rishon, and whatever it touches becomes a sheni. Okay, so the same thing is all of them become sheni. Perishu kulan shnios. So even if they separate out, they all become sheni l'tuma. And then come the hands. So hands are yadayim. Yadayim are automatically, if you haven't been concentrating on your hands are sheni. Okay. The reason why we wash our hands before bread is because of truma, right? Because we've got to remind kohanim before they eat truma, they need to wash their hands because truma can become a shlishi. Okay.
So we're not saying it's because of tumor, it's because of truma.
Because of truma. Because of truma in truma.
In truma, right.
Okay. So if these loaves of bread are truma bread, then the whole of them become shlishi, and they are tamei with truma shlishi, and even perishu kulan shlishiyos, and they all, and even again they separate out, they all become shlishi. Now Mishna ches mikretzes shehaisa techila v'hishich la acheros. So now let's say you have one that started out as a rishon, okay? So it became tamei from touching a sheretz, let's say. Okay, and then but that was before they were baked, and then after they were baked, they grew together. Okay, kulan techila. While they are connected, they are all considered a rishon. Perishu, but now if they separated, he techila, the one that became tamei originally, is a rishon, v'kulan shnios, and everything else becomes a sheni because it's been in contact with a rishon, but they don't themselves become a rishon. Okay, while they are once they have separated apart. Okay, you see the difference over here is that in the first case that we were talking about in the previous Mishnah, it became tame while they were connected. In this case, it became tame before they were connected.
Right.
So there's no question as to which one is the origin of the tumah. What happens if it became tame as a sheni, for example, a tame liquid touched it? While they're connected, they're all sheni. Pershu, hishniya, v'kulan shlishios. And everything else becomes a shlishi, assuming that they're truma. If it's regular chulin doesn't go beyond a sheni. Okay. Aisa shlishis. So now let's say this this was a loaf of truma, and somebody touched it with tamei hands, right? V'hishich la'acheros. And you bake them, and the rest of the loaves became touched it. He shlishis, bekulan tohoros, bein shepershu, bein shelo pershu. So here we're not even going to connect them even at the current moment, which is an interesting. It's an interesting contradiction almost between this and the contrast between this and the previous cases in the Mishnah, is because if you had to separate them out, they would not be tamei at all. So therefore, they're not even tamei while they're in contact. An interesting situation. I would not have guessed this. I would have followed if I would have followed the pattern, I would have said, okay, while they're in contact, they're all shlishi, and then you separate them out, they become tahor. But that's an interesting little wrinkle in the halacha over here.
So if it was a shlishi and he attached others to it, or it happened by itself in the oven,
it doesn't matter.
They're all shlishi.
The standard case would be that, okay, so the first one became tamei as a shlishi because somebody with unclean hands touched it, let's say. Okay, so and now you baked them and they all grew together. So you would say, following on the pattern, everything should be shlishi now.
Right.
They touched, but they're not even. Only the one that was touched is shlishi. Everything else is tahor completely.
Right.
Whether they're in contact or not.
All right.
Okay. Mishnah test. Okay. So here we've got loaves of kodesh. Okay. Now when we hear kodesh can go down to a revi. Okay, it's a higher kedusha than truma, and therefore they're susceptible to fourth degree tuma as well. Okay. So kikros of kodesh. Okay. Now they're not smooth, so they've got little bumpy bits inside them, and inside them mayim mekudashim, which is that was water that was kept al taras kodesh, right? For example, okay, and here we've got a situation where all the loaves are touching each other. Nitmeis achas mehen b'sheretz. Now let's say one of these loaves, they're all lying in a big pile, and they've got little bits of kodesh water in them. Okay, one of the loaves becomes tamei from a sheretz. Okay, now sheretz is an abatuma. The loaf is going to become a sheni. Okay, what's going to happen is that the sheni touches. So let's say the sheni touches the loaf next door, which becomes a shlishi. Okay, but the shlishi's got water inside it, and the water automatically becomes a rishon, because that's just the gezerah that we have on tamei liquids. It becomes a rishon and comes back and elevates the tumah of that loaf from a shlishi to a sheni, which then goes and touches the next one, which becomes a shlishi, and is matame the water that's in it to become a sheni, to become a rishon, and then it becomes a sheni again. Kulan tameos, you see, so that's why it's like a whole domino run over here. Every one of them is going to become tamei. But what happens if we're talking about truma loaves? Matame shnaim uposel echad. Okay, with truma, it's just going to if the kikoros were not of kodesh, then it's just going to then the tuma is going to pass through two of them and is only going to pass one. Okay, how does it work? Okay, so the first one that became tummy from the sheretz becomes a rishon. The loaf that's touching it becomes a sheni l'tuma. Okay, but kikar shlishis, and the third one becomes pasul because it's made a shlishi l'tuma, but a shlishi does not make a revi in truma. Okay, and it doesn't even become tame from the liquid that was in its that was inside it to become a rishon. Okay, it turns out that this kikar. Oh, okay, why it says because there's an explanation in the introduction to the Mishnah. I'm just going to look at the introduction of the Mishnah in my Kahati. Okay, sheni shebechulin mitami mashke chulin posel ochli truma. Vashlishi shebechuma mitami mashke kodesh. Yot techila posel leochle kodesh. So it turns out that whatever makes truma pasul, like a sheni latuma, matame is matame mashke chulin liquids and truma liquids to be a rishon latuma, and whatever pasul's kodesh, like a shlishi for tuma, that makes it shall I say revi'i b'kodesh, matame mashke kodesh lios rishon latuma.
Makiris Kodesh, the consecrated. Why do we have water in there? What are in the cavities?
Why do they have the water in there? It doesn't matter. It's there.
All right.
Okay. We're not asking why the water is there. We're talking about here's the situation. Now what's going to happen? Okay.
All right.
Well, shlishi truma. A shlishi in truma is not matame mashke truma because it doesn't pasul truma. Mishum she'ena posel es truma. She'en shlishi ose revi'i b'truma. Okay, because the liquid, truma liquid can only, in order for the liquid to be elevated to the level of a level of rishon, it has to be susceptible to the tuma in the first place. So let's just take a look at our Kodesh case. Our Kodesh case, Kodeshem is susceptible even down to fourth level. Okay. Yeah. So what's the mechanism? Is that the first one is a rishon touches the sheni. The sheni touches let's say sheni touches a shlishi. Okay, and the shlishi now has liquid inside it. Okay, and that liquid becomes a revi. However, liquids, because of our gezerah, jump up from revi, bang, right back up to rishon. Okay, so that rishon now makes the loaf next to it, the loaf it's on, a sheni, which then again makes the loaf next to it a shlishi, which again makes the liquid a revi'i, which jumps back up to a rishon.
Right. Now the water that was in the revi'i jumps onto the next one, which is a shlishi now, which becomes a sheni.
No. So the water that's a revi'i, because the water is a revi'i, and we have a gezerah that liquids automatically become a rishon. So if they became tameh, then they're rishon. Liquids are always a rishon.
Right.
Okay. Right. But they first have to be susceptible. So in the case of truma, truma can only get up to third degree. Okay, so let's say you've got truma that became so the truma becomes tameh as a rishon. It touches the one next to it, which becomes a sheni. Okay, and then the one next to it becomes a shlishi. Okay, so now the shlishi has got liquid in it as well, but that liquid over there is a truma liquid, and that liquid cannot become a revi because truma doesn't get revi. Therefore, the liquid inside this loaf stops there, doesn't become tameh at all. Okay, because the liquid is not susceptible to fourth degree, and once it's not susceptible to fourth degree, it cannot become first degree either. It's first got to get over the bar to become tameh, and then we jump it up to rishon. Okay, that's the point that we have over here. Okay, however, if the liquid is between the loaves, not on each individual loaf, so the liquid is between the loaves, after truma called tameh, then the liquid the way it will happen is that, let's say your loaf is a sheni, it's going to be matame the liquid between them to a shlishi, which then automatically becomes a rishon, and then is matame the next loaf to a sheni, which then is matame the next liquid to a shlishi, which jumps back up to a rishon, and so on. Okay.
I think we should skip this part. This was oh my gosh. All
Okay.
right. All right. Okay, we'll go to an easier thing. All right. Okay.
Okay, yeah, let's go to para. Yud Aleph
Okay.
Gimel.
Good. Okay. Pressed figs of truma that fell into mecharos, and he took and ate it. If its volume is that of an egg, whether it's tummy or tahor, the water is rendered tummy, and the person who eats it is liable to death. If its volume is not like an egg, the water remains tahor, but the person who eats it is liable to death. Rav Yossi says if it is tahor, the water remains tahor. A person who is tahor for mekatos, who immersed his head and the greater part of his body in mekatos, is rendered tummy. Whatever requires immersion in water under biblical law renders tummy sacrificial foods, truma, coolant, and second tithe, and is forbidden with regard to entering the temple. After immersion, if he renders tummy sacrificial food and disqualifies truma, these are the words of Meah, but the Chachamim say it disqualifies sacrificial food and truma and is permitted with regard to coolant and second tithe. If he entered the temple, whether before his immersion or after his immersion, he is liable. Whatever requires immersion in water under rabbinical law renders tummy sacrificial food and disqualifies truma, but is permitted with regard to coolant and second tithe. These are the words of Meah, but the Chachamim forbid in regard to second tithe. After his immersion, he is permitted with regard to all of them, and if he comes into the temple, whether before his immersion or after his immersion, he is exempt.
Right.
The guy. And we had Judalim base. He then comes to send away the living bird. He does not turn his face to the sea, nor to the city, nor to the desert, as stated, and he shall send the living bird out of the city toward a field. He then comes to shave the Mitzorah, and the Kohen places a razor over the Mitzorah's entire body, and Mitzorah then washes his clothes and immerses. The Mitzorah no longer causes tumor by entering, but he still causes tumor like a sheretz. He is permitted to enter within the wall, but is banned from his house for 7 days and prohibited from marital relations. On the seventh day, he shaves the second shaving, and like the first shaving, washes his clothes and immerses. He becomes tahor from causing truma like a sheretz, but he still is tummy. As one who immersed on that day, he's permitted to eat the tithe. When the sun sets, he's permitted to eat truma, and when he brings his atonement, he's permitted to eat kedoshim. Thus, there are 3 stages of becoming tahor for a mitzvah, and 3 stages of becoming tahor for a woman after childbirth.
Okay. And one more.
These 3 must shave, and all their shaving is a mitzvah, a nazir, a mitzvah, and a leviyah. If these 3 shave without a razor, or if they left 2 hairs, they have accomplished nothing.
Okay. Elim.
Okay, this is Kaf Zion base.
Yeah.
Cloth can contract midras tumor if it measures 3 handbreadths by 3 handbreadths, and it can contract short tumor if it measures 3 finger breadths by 3 finger breadths. Sack can contract tumor if it measures 4 handbreadths by 4 handbreadths. Hide and can contract tumor. If it measures 5 handbreadths by 5 handbreadths, a mat can contract tumor if it measures 6 handbreadths by 6 handbreadths. This measure applies equally to midras tumor and corpse tumor. Rav Meah says regarding sack, it remains as its remnants contract tumor if they measure 4 handbreadths, but initially it contracts tumor when it is completed. If one made a piece of material within 2 handbreadths of cloth and 1 handbreadth of sack, 3 handbreadths of sack and 1 handbreadth of hide, or 4 handbreadths of hide and 1 handbreadth of matting, it is tahor. But if he made a piece of material within 5 handbreadths of matting and 1 handbreadth of hide, 4 handbreadths of hide and 1 handbreadth of sack, or 3 handbreadths of sack and 1 handbreadth of cloth, it's tummy. This is the rule. Whatever has a different material attached to it, or if it is from a material more stringent than it is tummy. It is from a material less stringent than it is tahor. If one trims any of these materials into a piece measuring 1 handbreadth by 1 handbreadth, it's tummy. If one trims from the bottom of the basket a piece measuring 1 handbreadth by 1 handbreadth, it's tummy. If he trimmed a piece from the sides of the basket, Reb Shimon revs tahor, but the sages say if one trims a piece of basket measuring 1 handbreadth by 1 handbreadth, and in any place, it's tummy. Okay.
Okay. Zvachim Yod Daled Yod.
Okay. These are the offerings that must be offered at the tabernacle offerings that were consecrated for the tabernacle. Communal sacrifices must be offered at the tabernacle while an individual offerings may be offered at the minor bima. An individual offerings which can be consecrated for the tabernacle must be offered at the tabernacle, but if he offered them at the minor bama, he is not liable. What are the differences between a private bama and a communal bama? Leaning, slaughter in the north, slavification of the blood all around, and the altar. The altar tenufa. And bringing near, Rabbi Shimon says, mikvah offerings are not brought at a bama, and the kahuna sacred vestments, sacred vessels, a pleasing aroma, separation regarding blood, and washing the hands and feet. But the disqualifications were due to near time and tent, nosser, and tummy are the same for both.
Okay.
What are we doing next after Zvachim? I'm sorry?
Menachos.
Menachos, okay. Okay, we are in the Durham.
No, Menachos.
I didn't take it out. I'm very sorry. All mincha offerings which is kamitza was performed for the sake of a designation other than that of their own are valid, but they are not credited to the owner's fulfillment of his obligation. Except for the sinner's mincha offering and the jealousy mincha offering. If one performed the kamitza and the sinner's mincha offering or the jealousy mincha offering for the sake of a designation other than their own, or he placed them in a vessel or carried them or burnt them on the altar for a designation other than their own, or for their own designation and the designation other than their own, for a designation other than their own, as well as their own designation, they are invalid. What is an example of for their own designation and a designation other than their own? For the sake of a sinner's mincha offering or the sake of a voluntary mincha offering. What is the example of a designation other than their own as well as their own designation? For the sake of a voluntary mincha offering as well as for the sake of a sinner's mincha offering. The sinner's mincha offering as well as any other mincha offering whose chamitza was performed by a non-kohen or onen, or a tevel yom, or one who locks investments, or who locks atonement, or whose hands and her feet have not been washed, or who's uncircumcised, or his tummy, or is sitting or standing upon utensils, or an animal, or his colleague's feet is invalid. If one performed kamitza with the left hand, he has invalidated it, but Masera says he'd only replace it and perform kamitza again with the right hand. If he performed kamitza and pebble came into his hand, or a grain of salt, or a particle of frankincense, he has invalidated it because they said the kamitza which is excessive or deficient is invalid, which is excessive, one in which he removed a heap komets, which is deficient, one is which he performed kamitza with his fingertips. How does he do it? He extends his fingers over the palm of his hand. Okay. And the Dharma.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Bay. If someone from the street was prohibited by another to benefit from one of them, he may not enter the yard. If Eliezer ben Yaakov says, he may say to him, I am entering into your partner's property, I am not entering into yours. Someone prohibited by another to benefit from another who owns a bathhouse or an olive press which are being leased in the city, if he has an interest in them, it is forbidden. If he does not retain an interest in them, it is permitted. If someone says to another konam, your house with respect to my entering it, your field with respect to my buying it, and he died and sold it to another person, it's permitted. If he said konam, this house with respect to my entering, or this field with respect to my buying, and he died and sold it to another, it is forbidden. If one says, I am to you cherem, the person prohibited by the net is forbidden. If you are to me cherem, the person making the net is forbidden. I am to you, and you are to me, both are forbidden. Both are permitted in something of the pilgrims from Babylon, but are permitted in something other than of that city. Okay, and we have
That's a shani.
Okay. Gimel Zion. If a tree stands inside but inclines to the outside, or stands outside and inclines to the inside, what faces the wall inward is considered inside, and what faces the wall outward is considered outside. Oil presses whose entrances are inside but their interiors are outside, or the entrances are outside and their interiors are inside. Beit Shammai say all is considered inside, but Beit Hillel says what faces the wall inward is considered inside, and what faces the wall outside is considered outside. The chamber is built into the holy part and opening to the whole non-holy. Their interior is not holy, but the roofs are holy. Built in non-holy and opening into holy, their interior is holy, but the roofs are non-holy. Built in the holy and non-holy and opening into the holy and non-holy, their interior and roofs above the holy toward the holy are holy, above the non-holy and toward the non-holy are non-holy. In Ma'aser Sheni which was brought into Yerushalayim became unclean, whether by an avatuma or by a valad atuma, whether inside or outside. Beit Shammai says it must be redeemed, and it all must be eaten inside, except that which became unclean by an avatuma outside. Beit Hillel says all must be redeemed and eaten outside, except that which was rendered unclean by a valad atuma inside. Okay.
Okay.
Right. Thank you. I'm sorry again for the lateness. Thank you very much. Have a great.
Have a wonderful month. We'll see you again on Thursday.
Enjoy your cheesecake.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.